Alright, today I'm going to be making a spinach chicken bake. Ingredients list will be in the description below. Alright, first I'm going to get started with activating the yeast. Simply adding in the active dry yeast packet. And after that is just adding in the two teaspoons of sugar. And then lastly, just adding in 3/4 cup of warm water. And I'm using a temperature gun to measure the correct temperature. I'm trying to avoid going over around 110 degrees. If it goes over that, then the yeast won't be able to activate. And now I'm just simply just gonna stir it until it dissolves. Once everything is fully dissolved, I am gonna also just let it rest for about 15 minutes or so to just let it bloom. And then while that's happening, I'm gonna be also blanching some spinach. Simply adding the spinach into the boiling water for around 30 to 45 seconds while stirring it. Once I finish blanching, I used the strainer to collect the spinach and then dunked it into some ice water that I had prepared ahead of time. I did forget to record draining the excess water from the spinach, but what I did was I collected all the spinach together and then squeezed it all together to remove as much water as possible. The results turns into a giant green ball of spinach. Now in a metal bowl, I added all my filling ingredients, which is the rotisserie chicken. Then I added the mozzarella cheese. I added the spinach next. I tried to rip it up a bit so it's more easier to mix. And then finally I added in the ranch. And then I just did one final mix before I went back to my yeast mixture because it's been about 15 minutes. Alright, just gonna have it a bit sped up in this location for a bit. Alright, back to the yeast mixture. This is what it looks like when it's fully bloomed. Now I'm just adding in the olive oil and then um, all-purpose flour. That was 2 tablespoons of olive oil and 2 cups of flour. And then now I'm just stirring it all together. Once I finish forming a ball with the dough, I apply a coating of olive oil a bit on the top so it doesn't dry out while it rises. And I usually let it rise for about 45 minutes, maybe sometimes an hour. After about an hour, the dough should be double in size like this. Now I'm shaping it into a ball shape, mainly so it's more easier to cut it into 4 pieces. The goal is to get about 4 equal pieces so all of them can cook evenly as possible through baking. If you do have a scale, I do recommend using that to just measure out all the weight for all the pieces. Now, once I do have all four pieces, I just rolled them into just four balls, so it's more easier to just roll out the dough. Now I'm just going to use a rolling pin to just evenly spread out the dough. And then once I form a, like a circle or a rectangle, uh, I just add in the filling, just right in the middle. I don't recommend overfilling each bake. That usually leads to difficulties in folding, and if there's a hole, that can usually lead to filling leaking out, or just it doesn't look as good. However, while I was making these bakes, what ended up happening was I was short on filling this time around. So I do recommend adding a bit more. I should have mentioned this a bit earlier in the video, but this is the second time I'm making a bake like this. Uh, the tips I've been mentioning around the videos is just my mistakes that I made on my first time making these bakes. So I'm just uh, relaying the knowledge of what went terrible the first time around. Now, for all the ingredients, it cost me about $72.72. However, some of the ingredients can last you for a while, and you can reuse them in other recipes. General ingredients like salt, sugar, flour, and olive oil can last for about a month to a few months. So, removing the general ingredients cost, it would be about $28 dollars and 6 cents. Addition to that, I did use about half the spinach, and I still have a lot of the mozzarella cheese left. So you can make about two batches of the bakes. So that's about 8 bakes in altogether. And then you can even use the leftover bones from the rotisserie chicken and make that into soup stock. Alright, and this is the final out of the four bakes. And soon I'm gonna start prepping up stuff for getting it ready for the oven. Now I brought out some metal pans lined with aluminum foil to place the bakes on top. I brushed the tops with a bit of olive oil to get the mozzarella cheese to stick. And while this is happening, I had my oven preheating. The temperature you want is about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. However, I had to set mine to 411 mainly due to some issues with my oven. Once it's done preheating, place the bakes inside of the oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. Do keep a watch, mainly because the cheese can easily burn. And around the 10 to 12 minute mark, I do recommend putting a piece of foil. I was a bit too late, so they are quite burned. So now I'm just gonna cut it, and the first one I end up just crumpling it by accident. So yeah, I just cut to a different one, see if get a better cross section of the piece. And overall, I may have put a little too little filling in these, but overall they're pretty good. And thank you to tuning in to the end of the video.